A Chinese spy ship will be entering a Lankan port next week. The Yuan Wang 5 is on its way to Sri Lanka's second largest port, that's Hambantota. This movement has set alarm bells ringing in India's security sphere, as Yuan Wang 5 is a powerful tracking vessel that has a significant signal aerial reach, which means that several ports in Kerala, Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh could be on China's radar. Reports even suggest that several vital installations in South India, including nuclear power plants in Kalpakkam and Koodankulam, could be under the threat of being snooped upon. But that's not all. Serious consequences of this deployment include the fact that it can capture ports of Kerala, Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh, bringing 6 South Indian ports under China focus. It's also been reported that China, through Sri Lanka, will try to dominate the Indian side of Tamil Nadu to push Chinese agenda through New Delhi. And Tamil youths in both Sri Lanka and in Tamil Nadu could be radicalized against India. What's also raising eyebrows is the fact that Colombo has permitted a Chinese, quote-unquote, resurgence survey ship to dock at the Hambantota port. Now, all of this despite India having offered aid to the tune of $4 billion to Sri Lanka to help the island nation fight its financial crisis. The centre says that it is seized on the matter and monitoring the developments, but both the opposition, at the moment at least, does not seem to be convinced.
We are aware of reports of a proposed visit by this vessel at Hambantota port in August. Let me just say that government carefully monitors any development having a bearing on India's security and economic interests and takes all necessary measures to safeguard them. I think that should be a clear message.
At this juncture, when we are providing all help, money, wheat, medicines, everything to Sri Lanka at this juncture, without any gratitude, they have invited the Sri Lankan ship of Hambantota. Therefore, my concern, I am worried about the security of India. Therefore, they should not allow the ship to come to Sri Lanka. Then the minister should make a statement on this. In the Indian Ocean, they want to occupy the Indian Ocean, and the Americans also, they are worried. The Sri Lanka, China, they want to totally control the Indian Ocean area.
And following, in fact, this security scare that's come to the fore, opposition has slammed the centre, says they're caught napping against China.
I find it so difficult to comprehend how did we find ourselves napping when the Chinese were building this so-called port in Hambantota, which is actually a military base, and just a couple of miles, nautical miles away from the Indian coast. So this is a matter of serious introspection for MEA, for the government of India, and we need to prevail upon the Chinese government that this is not acceptable. This is a violation of the integrity and sovereignty and security of the country. The situation in Sri Lanka is an outcome of the debt trap diplomacy which China has followed, and Sri Lanka, I think, should understand what the Chinese are up to, and I really hope that government of India and Sri Lanka will work together to prevent this militarization of this zone so close to Indian shores.
It's a very serious matter. The intention of China towards India has never been. What they are doing in Hambantota today is not beyond. Now, I apprehend that they are planning to create some problems south side.
So you think government should take up this matter seriously?
Very seriously.
All right, let's take this across to our guest. Joining us with us is Mr. R. Rajgopalan, senior journalist. With us also is Jehan Pereira. He's the Executive Director of National Peace Council of Sri Lanka. Mr. Pereira, let me begin with you, sir, because, you know, we have seen what has happened in the last several months. I mean, the whole world knows the kind of civil unrest that we've seen in Sri Lanka. We're also aware of how Sri Lanka itself has acknowledged the role of India. Yet what explains the fact that this Chinese vessel is being allowed? Because many believe that Sri Lanka's current crisis is also a result of, as one member of parliament here in India put it, the result of China's own debt trap diplomacy.
You want me to speak because
Yes.
I didn't hear the whole everything you said.
Question. I'll repeat the question, sir. I apologize for the poor quality of that line. I'll just say that, what explains the fact that this Chinese vessel is what many believe could be used for dual purposes, even though the reason, quote unquote, may be for research and development purposes. The fact is that this is a vessel that many experts believe, security experts, that it could be misused, that it could have on its radar several Indian ports, and all of this happening at Hambantota at a time when India has perhaps been the biggest lent the biggest helping hand to Sri Lanka in these days, at a time when the crisis itself, many believe, has been created by China because of its debt-tap diplomacy.
I think all Sri Lankans are very grateful that India has given us this aid. I mean, this aid has helped us tremendously, especially with our petrol long lines. Even today, at this time, we have long lines of stretching, say, 1 or 2 kilometers, and gas shortage, and also electricity power cuts. So we are grateful to India. But I think that maybe India is feeling hurt that despite India's very generous assistance to Sri Lanka, we still let China come in. But the problem is that what India has given is not enough. We need more. Sri Lanka needs more assistance. And also, Sri Lanka owes China a lot of money. And we need China's cooperation in reducing their debt or putting it off in order to get IMF support. Because IMF wants us to negotiate with our other donors, the ones whom we are other creditors rather, and sort of get them to reduce the payments that we have to make to them. And China is one of them. So far, China has been saying, no, we can't reduce. We can give you another loan, but we can't reduce the loan burden on you. So anyways, Sri Lanka has to, while being grateful to India, Sri Lanka also has to think about getting more money from China and the IMF.
Okay.
And I think that's the reason why we are not in a position to say no to China, because it's not as if other ships don't come to our port. We have Russian ships coming, we have American ships, Japanese, Korean, South Korean, and Indian ships, Pakistani ships. So I think this Chinese spy ship, of course, this may be a very special ship, but I think it is being, from a Sri Lankan point of view, it's being a little bit overblown. That's what it seems.
Okay, is it being overblown? It's okay. I can understand your concerns economically and the kind of crisis that Sri Lanka is going through. Perhaps no country should be going through this kind of a crisis. But let me bring in Mr. Rajagopalan on that, because Mr. Rajagopalan, there are 2 or 3 questions that emerged from what Mr. Jehan Pereira has just shared with us. One is that obviously the economic concerns of the situation or the crisis there in Sri Lanka is leading to several strategic concerns for us here now in India. But many would question why we allowed such a situation to develop in the first place when Hambantota, which is so close to Indian shores, is seeing such a port being developed right under our nose. How could we have allowed this to happen is what one member of parliament who you just heard from there from the BJD actually mentioning. And I think that is a very valid question.
Valid question, but at the same time, Sri Lankan representative in the show, Mr. Jan, he is unnecessarily bringing it overblown and out of context. These are all certain things which I don't like to hear from him, because Sri Lanka has backstabbed India. Sri Lanka is blackmailing India by showing China, China, China. You took 25,000 crores, sir, not 1 or 2 rupees. And we are being taxed for that. Our tax money has been sent to you. So therefore, that is one question. Sri Lanka's Prime Minister, Dinesh Gunawardene, is also a communist supporter. He did not speak anything. The present president, though he said it's not a spy ship, but we know that 8 important ports in India, that is Chennai, Cochin, Vijayawada, these are all certain things which they will spy. The Koodankulam near Hambantota is under big surveillance by the Chinese ship. So we get exposed. Apart from that, Madhav, it is also an internal problem. 57 DMK MPs are there in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha put together. Why they did not raise it in the parliament? Vaiko spoke to you, but he should have spoken inside the parliament and brought it to the notice of the government of India. Therefore,
No, actually, he
DMK
did.
has
To set the record straight, Mr. Rajgopalan, just to set the record straight, he actually raised it in the 0 hour yesterday in Rajya Sabha, following which I spoke to
Lok
him
Sabha.
actually
I'm
there.
talking about
But
Lok
yes,
Sabha. I'm talking about Lok Sabha.
yes, yes, certainly, certainly.
I'm talking about a second thing, most important thing, Madhav. The cabinet committee on security had dealt with this subject, and they have come to one conclusion that Tamil Nadu security is paramount, because China's long-term policy is to divide Tamil Nadu from India, where, the separatist tendency is more.
Okay. Okay,
So therefore,
okay.
my apprehension is Sri Lanka is blackmailing India. Government should be aware of it. It is not helping Tamil.
That's a very
Tamilians
serious charge.
in-
That's a very serious charge, because while the concerns may be valid, Mr. Pereira, that our ports, that our nuclear installations are all within range of this entire submarine or this vessel that is in fact coming into Hambantota. So there are some very valid and genuine security concerns. But what is perhaps not acceptable to many here in India is the fact that the economic crisis seems to be spilling over into the strategic area. Now, these are two very, very different departments. And to say that we cannot say no to China on what are strategic issues when there is a very clear threat to the biggest supporter perhaps of Sri Lanka today, that is India, that is why there is a feeling, and what Mr. Rajgopalan is voicing, that there is perhaps some kind of an arm twisting or a blackmailing perhaps going on part of Sri Lanka's part. That's one view. How do you respond to that?
Well, I think, Sri Lanka at the moment is in a very desperate situation. Sri Lanka is a very small country, and the countries that are sort of at loggerheads with each other are very big, powerful ones. India, China, US, the Quad, all of them are tussling over Sri Lanka. So it's very hard for Sri Lanka in this situation. I don't think Sri Lanka is trying to blackmail India. Sri Lanka is trying to survive at this time, and it's trying to coexist, survive in a world in which there are hostile powers which are hostile to each other. And so the best that we can do, our Prime President has said, is that we should be non-aligned. And I know it is probably very upsetting to India that this ship came in. But I think Sri Lanka also, because the fact is that Sri Lanka now has a port which has been funded by China. We did offer it to India at that time, but India found it uneconomic, which it was indeed. And Sri Lanka very foolishly went into that port and couldn't repay India,
yes.
China.
Yeah, Mr. Rajgopal, just hold on to your thoughts.